Welcome to Governance Now. This is Gitanjali Minhas and you're watching Checks and Balances. The Constitution provides for equal rights to women. However, gender bias and patriarchy have largely restricted their employment opportunities. According to the Ministry of Labour and Employment, female labour force participation rate in the age group 15 years and above increased to 40.3% in 2023-2024 from 22% in 2017-2018. This is still below the world average of 47% and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development rate of 67%. Several reports over the years have spoken about economic benefits of having more women at workforce. In fact, a recent report by consulting firm Bain & Company and Magic Bus India Foundation has said that India needs 400 million women workforce to achieve its GDP of $30 trillion for Viksit Bharat by 2047. It says India can unleash economic benefit of $14 trillion from women alone by increasing women work participation rate to 70% by 2047. In fact, the union budget for 2025-2026 has set an ambitious target to increase women labor force participation rate to 70% by 2047. As things stand today, more women work in invisible, informal, and labor-intensive sectors. Having more women in workforce is not just a matter of economic necessity, but it's also about family welfare, social protection and security, as well as dignity of work. And this requires active support of government, private sector, non-profits, and investors to create policies, infrastructure, and funding. Speaking on the issue are three women achievers and thought leaders. Abha Singh is a women's rights, gender justice activist and advocate. She's also a former civil servant.
A girl's job is never given that premium which is with a boy. Which I see when you come in this setup, then ambition is not there. Some of the women voluntarily drop out that we will take the child burden, we will take the back seat, we will take care of the children, and you keep climbing ladders, even though they may be both from same batch of IIM Ahmedabad, but the husband would be sitting as a CEO and the wife would be at some vice president level because she had dropped her career, taken a gap to take care of the children. And when I talk to them, I feel they take it very normal. They feel, no, it's okay. He's the husband, let him do it. Why? You kill your ambition by the society stereotype that no, you should not be. So that is another reason. Also, in the top level, if you see, the continuity of service is very important. Even when you go in the job market, they are applying, their waiting period is higher than the waiting period of male.
Economist and gender mainstreaming expert Mithali Nikor is also the founder of research and advocacy group Nikor Associates. She says that safety issues and gender bias are the main impediments to women's participation in workforce, and women need to assert themselves for level playing field.
Until we start investing in bridging this gender gap through investments in the care economy or investments in setting up childcare facilities, setting up elder care facilities, those are the major time consumers, time guzzlers of care work. We have to take the care economy seriously if we have to bring women out of the home. Unpaid care work, gender gaps in education, that's bridged to a great extent. We also see women in STEM opting for academic type job roles. They will go and they will work as a physics professor rather than a computer science engineer. So while at a macro level you can say India has enough women in STEM education, but they're not training themselves for jobs. You have issues like the lack of safety in cities. You can't commute to your workplace after the time that you want. Then you have issues with entrepreneurship and the fact that women are constantly looked over when it comes to access to finance for opening their own businesses, and even the kind of businesses that they end up doing versus what men end up opening and getting funding for. This stems from, this traditional role that we keep on assigning to women. To a great extent, women internalize it and they don't question it. Until women themselves don't start to assert themselves, assert their choices in terms of, even if I'm earning less or it's more important, like my job is as important as yours. If these messages don't go to them in their youth, it's really creating a complete breakdown of the movement that we are trying to build. And the biggest GDP contribution is going to come from women working in the corporate sector because they have the highest salaries, they have the highest value creation that they're doing, apart from, of course, starting your own business.
A woman leader can enhance business outcome and promote gender equality and be a role model in an organization. The Companies Act 2013 requires listed companies and certain specified companies to have at least one woman as director on their boards. However, the compliance is low. A survey by Udeti Foundation says that only 18% of women hold jobs in India's largest companies. Many more studies found that women are used as proxies without any decision-making power.
I work a lot on gender justice and issues. I found that these women directors don't have the voting right, or they are part of the family who have just been put there as a face. So even though the law has come that they have followed the law by making one women director, but then again the patriarchy comes in. I feel that women need to come together.
This obsession with having women in boards is also a very Western concept. In Western economies, board positions, etc., are much more professional as opposed to family business oriented. In India, it's clearly a family representation. But having said that, it's good to have women on boards. It's good for the business as well. There is a lot that can be done, with the power of being on the board. Okay. And it's very important. So as the promoters are getting younger and even their wives are getting our wives are also not only from Gen X but from the millennial generation, they can use their position for promoting other women. So that's good. So at the end of the day, we have to take a demand driven approach. The sectors where the jobs are coming up, that kind of micro level gender mainstreaming has to come in. Of course, that requires a lot of back end in terms of skilling and in terms of making sure that the pipeline of skilled women are available to take on those jobs in those areas. And also it involves working with employers to have that sensitization. With respect to senior management and leadership in corporate, the CXO level appointments, there you find that it's always a mix of corporate politics, and being perceived as a leader is something which contributes to a lot of women losing out from senior leadership positions even though they have better numbers and they might have worked their whole lives. There's a whole role of unconscious bias and unlearning that goes into bringing women into CXO roles.
Lieutenant General of the Indian Army, now retired, Madhuri Kanitkar is a decorated officer of the Armed Forces and the third woman to be promoted to 3-star rank. Kanitkar is now the Vice Chancellor of Maharashtra University of Health Sciences and also serves on Prime Minister's Science, Technology and Innovation Council, says that societal attitudes towards women in workforce and women as leaders need to change.
We've progressed in the country letting women go ahead, but I don't think the society as a whole has really moved at that pace. Women are empowered today, the men are not. The men haven't accepted this new dynamics of women coming into leadership roles. If that woman is going to work as much, late hours, travel, and is expected to come home and get a hot dinner ready or give a cup of tea for everyone, that support systems are very, very important. The organizations which are helping with maybe setting up creches or helping a woman with support systems are having a lot of women on their workforce, and they're doing very well. A case in example is Indian Oil. They have got women today working in their refineries, women working at their petrol pumps. They took it up with a very conscious effort of providing them policies and decisions. When women reach the top, they can make a difference.
On Maternity Benefit Act, Mitali, who advises multilateral organizations like the World Bank, United Nations, etc., says the act is a structural barrier, for it leaves the employers and especially the entrepreneurs in a vulnerable position. They may pay the employee during her maternity benefit and still be unsure if she will return to work or just hand her resignation letter. For the employee too, she may be in a vulnerable position as her employer may not consider her to be fit for work, as they may not want to pay her during the maternity benefit.
The act itself creates structural barriers for women. I have presented this in front of the highest levels of decision making in the Ministry of Labour, which is responsible for this legislation. There is recognition that there are certain pockets which need relief. especially startups and MSMEs, we should come up with something called a shared parental leave. In the shared parental leave, mothers and fathers should have a choice between themselves on how to split the 6 months. Even if 100% goes to the mother, that's family's choice. Secondly, the cost of the leave should be borne equally between the companies that employ the parents. Second option, which I've also given them, is that you can have something called a parental leave fund, similar to the pension fund. When you go on your maternity or paternity leave, or your parental leave, you can simply get payouts from the parental leave fund that you've created with your savings and employer co-contributions, all of which can be made tax-free. These are financial instruments that India has experience of running. I mean, our pension fund system is amongst the best in the world, and it's entirely tax exempt. So why can't we have a parental leave fund?
I was director GPO. I thought, let me open a creche in GPO so that my women staff who had to go on leave and who could not join back, they can come. First thing they said, ma'am, fine, you open a creche in GPO, but how do we come from Kalyan, Badlapur, Kalwa, like holding a baby in a local which you cannot even enter and get down. It is so crushed. So that means where staff is staying, there you need creches, there you need support. So you need adequate creches, you need family support so that they can come. Also now, thanks to COVID, we started flexi hours and working from home in the elementary stage. If we want these women to become CEOs, if you want these women to be in the Fortune 500 companies or Forbes 30, then that means that when they come and work, they are given a level playing field. And that level playing field will be when they have house support, when the men's mindset improves, the husband says, I will take care, I'll take paternity leave, so that men can also contribute and be home while the woman goes and pursues her job.
If you feel strongly that there is a gender bias, you should be able to voice it and voice it through competence. Where I came from, so the armed forces, I found that competence was given a lot of importance. It was not that I had it on a cakewalk. There were times where there was even a basic thing like a toilet for a lady wasn't there. So you went back and discussed it and helped create those facilities instead of saying, this is not there, that is not there. So I think that is why women before me, there were 2 women who had become lieutenant generals when there was a gap of 14 years. But obviously they did such a great job, and I came in and look where we went so fast. Today, the DG AFMS is a woman, the DGMS Army is a woman, the DGMS Navy is a woman. So out of 10 lieutenant generals, there are 3 lieutenant generals, and they're all in leading positions. And that's happened just in 4-5 years since I left. Especially because me and my husband were both in the armed forces, and those days the policies weren't so helpful. Out of our 36 years of being married in uniform, 24 years we were apart, which was, I thought, the toughest hurdle, because he was an evolved person, an empowered person, brought up to respect a capable woman, and therefore he could support me, and we landed up both being the first lieutenant general couple in India. So I took it in my stride and found solutions in every challenge instead of say I can't do this or can't do that. And that is why I probably earned a lot of respect of my male colleagues. How much ever you give a support system, the role of a mother is very important in every child's life. And that should not be looked down upon. So when you give her time off and let her come back, or give flexi hours to let her handle those, you're doing a service to the nation. You're not lowering your standards or supporting. I think that attitude will come in once more women reach the top.
Vishakha guidelines formulated by Supreme Court in 1997 as well as POSH Act of 2013 are both aimed to guarantee gender equality and dignity at workforce. Both underline the fact that harassment deters women from building careers and shoves them out of the workplace into the confines of their homes. However, sexual harassment at workplace continues to increase.
In fact, I'll tell you, I handle a lot of sexual harassment cases at workplace. The law is very clear that if you're working in the unorganized sector, you're working in the corporate sector, if you're more than 10 women in an office, there should be an internal complaints committee, things like that. But do we make the workspaces safe for women? So many times, if a woman is getting a better job opportunity or a promotion, it is in a hard area, a far-flung area, women don't take it. Hinders women from reaching the top. First is the family setup, patriarchy. Second, if they've come out, they've done their IIT IITs, they've done their MBAs, IIM Ahmedabad. Then it is their job placements. Parents don't allow them to go far off places. Then for the parents, marriage is a bigger priority. I was doing a round table, sexual harassment at workplace. Women were not ready to speak, but some of those who spoke, they said, look, when we complain, we are transferred to such places where it becomes difficult for us to work, because no management wants any kit and no management wants that you stand up. In fact, I have filed this PIL in the Supreme Court where I have challenged the Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act. Why I am talking about it is very important. Till the time you make women safe and confident in the corporate sector, women are not going to openly come, or parents also not going to stand behind. One big issue where women, if they stand up, they lose their jobs or they get thrown out. And this is not only in this corporate sector, even banks. A lot of women from the banks have come and met me. They said, managers actually molest us or they are abusive. But if we say something, they transfer us to such a far off place, it becomes difficult for us to work. It stops women from reaching the top. And also the gap, like premium is not placed on their jobs.
Ministry of Home Affairs has taken out a regulation just 2 years ago where they have said that every single police station in this country has to have a women and child desk. How many police stations actually have it? Looking at grievance redressal mechanisms and response, who do I call?
Yeah.
No one knows. And I think that the reason for that is because 181 is managed by a government agency. Now, they don't have the capacity to go on a social media and, do a attractive social media campaign. So why is it that all our Bollywood stars and South stars who are making so much money out of their movies, can't they just take like 5 minutes of their time and just say, for women's safety, call 181. Simple campaign, very effective, large reach. At the end of the day, this is very critical. When we're talking about women's safety, one important area we've been studying is the Nirbhaya scheme and what is happening with the Nirbhaya scheme. Where are you going to go? Like if you're experiencing domestic violence, you go to the one-stop center, you stay there for 3 or 4 days, you've registered your complaint, then what? The entire system after that is very ill-defined and very non-transparent. And this deters women from, even registering a complaint.
I do family law also, and when women come to me, I said, are you mentally prepared? Because they are going to tear your reputation apart in the court. Character assassination is the easiest thing to do for a woman. So even if she has the courage to speak up, she knows that she'll be blasted for some character, that she keeps quiet. And also, even if you don't register your FIR the moment an offense happens, then you have to explain the delay in the police station or in the court. And even though Supreme Courts and all have come out and said that, look, if there is a silence and you are complaining criminal law, there is no time frame. If you can explain the delay, then your offense should be registered. But even people will say, no, there is some calculation in this. And we also per se are not ready to have faith in our women. If you see dowry laws, now suddenly men have come together and started saying, oh, dowry laws are being misused. Every year, 6,400 young brides are burnt alive. Written in FIR is death due to kitchen fire. 6,400 are the 2024 figures of NCRB. Cause of death written is death due to kitchen fire. Nowhere does this happen in the world. Happens only in India. So can I ask these men, how many of you have died due to kitchen fire in the house? Just because an exception happens and 2 men commit suicide, you say no, the law is weak. It is the police which is seeing that, oh, the other side is loaded, let me knock off money. Woman has come to file a complaint. The moment you make the cop accountable, or for that matter, the judge is accountable, that you cannot delay cases. It has to be done in a time-bound manner, of the misuse of law will finish. So that is a systemic failure which is leading to misuse of laws. You have to make women safe. When we send our daughters to school or we leave them at home, we should know that they are safe. Keeping a track record of criminals is something we need to do. There are cases where these rapists have come out and raped again. We need to make laws effective. We need to make things transparent. We need to make the cops accountable. We need to attack corruption in a big way. Financial literacy also is something we need to do for women. How well they invest their funds, how well they make their money roll. Awareness is something we need a lot.
Government interventions like right to education, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, midday meals, Anganwadi workers have bridged the gaps in education to a large extent. However, once the girls reach 8 or 9 standard, they drop out of schools due to lack of sanitation, non-availability of sanitary pads, distance to school, stalking, eve teasing, etc. And also, once the girls are 12 or 13 years old, their parents who work in the unorganized sector would rather rather that their daughters take care of the house and look after younger siblings. To empower these girls for the future, it is important to bring back into the schools so that they can pursue their education and acquire the required skill sets. Even in judiciary, the number of women remain low. Opaque judicial appointment processes, gender bias, patriarchy, and lack of institutional support impede access of women to leadership positions.
I am a practicing lawyer in Bombay High Court. It pains me to see that mostly I see these young girls carrying books and files for the councils. Very few who have town councils, like the senior councils that we call women, or even as top councils, like be it in the criminal field or in the corporate field. You would not find women engaged by these top firms and all. It's basically judiciary continues to be a male domain. And in fact, if you see, even same thing is for the judgeship. Barely 13.4% are female judges in the high courts. And if you come to Supreme Court, it is even worse. It is 9.3% female judges. Although the situation is better at the district level. At the district level, the percentage is 36.3%. So we see as you go higher, position of women is getting primarily by law was never thought of as a profession for females. I have a lot of interns who come to work with me and I ask them, they say, ma'am, people don't want to marry lawyers. We are at a disadvantage being girls because they say, no, she's a lawyer, she would be too tick, she would be questioning us and they feel she knows her rights, maybe she'll claim her stake in property or whatever. Girls who are joining law, they are having different difficulties in marriage now. That is what they tell me. Okay. So that is one. Second is in the criminal law which I practice, I don't find many females, primarily because the parents are scared that you will be meeting the antisocials, you'll be meeting the underworld or rape, murder, and again that is the stereotype that women cannot handle these tough lines, they can only do the softer ones like the family law. You will find maximum women lawyers in family law because they think divorce and all is a woman can handle. The high courts of states, especially like Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Orissa, Meghalaya, Tripura, they either have no women judges or only one woman judge. So even when issues come pertaining to women, you will never get one-side perception. Why Supreme Court has only 9.3% judge? And that is because number one, women don't come into the legal field. If they come to get elevated into the judiciary, you need a continuous practice. Okay. And again, if women, once they have children, they drop back. In High Court, though, it is compulsory that you should have a continuous service of these many years. Judiciary is very patriarchal and its legacy. And generally, the legacy of a father passes to the son. You may have a Chief Justice Chanchud, then you will have his son as the next Chief Justice of India, that's the son. Now also, it is Chanchud's son who's there in High Court. So I three generations, be it Justice Khanna, his uncle was our Supreme Court Chief Justice.
Many of the lower court judges now are women. Now, you know why that is? Is because lower courts are available in cities across the country.
Right.
And therefore, they can go and be a judge near their house. Even in a judge's life, that unpaid care work and the responsibility she has at home takes precedence over being a judge. Other issue with judiciary, of course, is that there's so much politics, for getting a promotion. So to reach the, level of a high court or a Supreme Court judge, just imagine how good you would have to be as a woman who has to rise through the ranks of district judgeship to reach a high court or a Supreme Court. It's nearly impossible.
Armed forces, so the police forces transferred every 1.5 to 2 years. You're uprooting your family. I don't think it's that tough in the judiciary. So you can always find solutions. Today, Maharashtra, there are so many women at the top. The chief secretary is a woman. The director general police, Rashmi Shukla, is a woman. So the initial ambition has to be there in the women. You can't force. And if that ambition is there, you find solutions. We have a thought process where women are given so much so that among the educated boys, sometimes they feel threatened. As women, we can contribute a lot by removing the gender lens when they are younger and treating them as equal. So if you're treating them as equal at home, if your son and daughter, they tend to continue to be great husbands who treat wives as equals. And that's why you need to get to empower women. Doesn't matter if she's in the career or not, we need to encourage women to take strong decisions. and I'm sure they would, not be as critical, because you reach through a lot of difficulties, you reach the top. So it becomes easy to become a little judgmental. The Melinda Gates Foundation does this Women in Public Health Women's Lift program, and I'm a mentor on that in our own university. I took a bunch of 35 women across faculties at that associate professor level, started a 6-month mentorship program for them of developing future academic leaders. I could do it because I'm in a position of strength.
The government has passed the Women's Reservation Act 2023 with 33% reservation for women, including scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, in the Lok Sabha as well as state legislative assemblies. This will come into effect after the delimitation exercise based on the next census. However, experts believe that this will get pushed to 2029 or beyond.
Politics is more of money and muscle power, which both women lack. And initially, politics was hijacked by the Bahubalis. If you see the ADR reports, 30% have criminal background. They floated a concept that if you are talking for 33% reservation for women, then there has to be reservation in reservation. That in that 33%, if you're doing for women, you do a OBC quota, you do a SC quota. These were mechanisms to derail the whole process. My issue was first give it to women, whether upper caste or lower caste, all are facing disadvantage, all are facing child marriage, all are facing abuse, sexual abuse. So don't try to bifurcate them. Second is now delimitation, because how do you do it if you are reserving 30 seats? The problem is the present seats, will you do it? Or there is one proposal which Election Commission, they said, okay, add 33% seats so that this continues and we get an additional. Then there are certain seats which are reserved for SC, ST. It requires a lot of study into it, that how you're going to do it. And if you reserve a seat, will it be only contested by women? Because you say this ticket, even now certain parties have given tickets to women, but they've lost. The winnability of women is barely 10%. They hardly win. So if you reserve a seat and you put a powerful male candidate, she's going to lose. So that means when you put reserve, then all women candidates should be female. Na?
Pure reservations is not a way forward. Including women for the sake of including them would be tokenism without real quality, without looking at the reason why this was introduced. The importance of including them, I think, the diversity, inclusivity, the different thought process which comes to the table when women come into leading positions, and how they can change a system. While waiting for that delimitation and census to occur, NGOs, there are a lot of think tanks. Can we start empowering women? Because otherwise you will have women just the front face and she'll be a puppet.
Because if Prime Minister Modi has said that I'm going to give it, I'm banking on it. The Prime Minister of a country has said, so at least we will get it in the next elections. But nonetheless, at least they've agreed in principle that next elections there would be 33% reservation for women. See, forget that matter. Congress was there for 15 years. You had a powerful woman like Sonia Gandhi. Yeah. Even she couldn't do. And women have never been a powerful vote bank.
When we look at a Rekha Gupta, for example, in Delhi, the new Delhi CM, or when we look at Atishi, or when we look at the Deputy Chief Minister of Rajasthan, Riya Kumari particularly has such an interesting story, and her life is so interesting, and how BJP has given her a chance, despite having troubled family background. It just shows how far our political parties have also come, and again, a meritorious party like BJP that way is doing that. But at the same time, there is a huge role that families play.
Gender parity at workplace is not only symbolic or ornamental representation. It brings on the table diverse, balanced and fair views to include all sections of the society. And as we speak of economic prosperity with having more women at workforce to increase their collective bargaining power, women too need to be less judgmental or disparaging about the merit of another. Thank you for watching Checks and Balances.